Welcome to this explainer. Let's just jump right into a really surprising and somewhat counterintuitive reality. Sometimes the actual business of conflict is vastly more lucrative than peace. Today, we're going to impartially peel back the layers of geopolitics to uncover the hidden economic systems that operate just beneath the surface of prolonged conflicts. When we think about global disputes, our minds usually go straight to the military strategies, right? The troop movements, the intense political rhetoric. But there is this entire economic engine running quietly in the background, and it is literally shaping the daily realities of millions of people. So let's tackle a super simple, but honestly incredibly provocative question. Who profits? We are looking past the daily military headlines today to investigate a much deeper dynamic. Like, is occupation merely about holding territory, or is it actually about economics? Because history shows us time and time again that security, ideology, and economics are constantly overlapping. And to be clear, we aren't here to point fingers or defend specific governments. Our goal today is purely to understand the financial machinery at play. Now, traditionally, we tend to measure war in the tragic loss of lives. But an occupation, well, that is measured in years or sometimes even decades of economic dependence. An occupation essentially shifts the battlefield away from straightforward military control over to systemic financial reliance. It completely reshapes the economic landscape for absolutely everyone involved, often for generations, creating this dynamic where the economy itself becomes the primary theater of control. Section 1. The mechanics of control. Moving beyond the battlefield. Just think about the sheer scale of the machinery required to fully control an entire region. We're talking about total systemic dominance over land, borders, and taxes. By controlling imports, exports, and even the basic movement of labor and physical infrastructure, the occupying power fundamentally dictates all economic activity. It's like a giant invisible net. Through this incredibly complex web of permits, regulations, and security measures, the occupied population experiences severe restrictions on their mobility and their ability to just do basic trade. Over time, this forced economic dependence becomes almost as significant as the physical military presence itself. Moving on to Section 2, Resources and Trade, the financial arteries. Look, throughout human history, land has always equaled wealth. Control the resources, and you control the region's lifeblood, whether we're talking about agricultural land, water sources, oil, gas, or minerals. Now, international law does generally place limits on how an occupying power can administer these resources, explicitly emphasizing that permanent appropriation is a no-go. But actually, scratch that. The reality on the ground is just incredibly complex. Control over these arteries still massively influences government revenues and local business opportunities. These resources remain some of the absolute most fiercely disputed aspects of any modern conflict. And here is where we see this brutal chain reaction kick off. When borders tighten, goods slow down to a crawl at checkpoints. Almost immediately, local businesses suffer because they simply can't get their supplies or ship out their orders. Inevitably, this forces local factories to shut down, and employment just plummets. When workers can't travel and exports face severe restrictions, sure, some businesses try to adapt, but entire economic sectors can literally just disappear overnight. Section 3. Rebuilding and Foreign Aid. The Reconstruction Economy. Conflict obviously brings immense destruction. But what happens after the infrastructure, the roads, schools, hospitals, the electricity grids, is destroyed? Well, rebuilding creates this massive, enormous demand. Construction firms, engineering companies, security contractors, and major financial institutions all become part of this sprawling reconstruction economy. But we really have to ask the hard questions here. Who is actually receiving these incredibly lucrative contracts? And do the local communities genuinely benefit from these massive reconstruction projects? It's a really tangled web of international aid, corporate commerce, and sheer local necessity. And this actually sparks a huge, fierce debate among economists right now. On one hand, you have emergency assistance, crucial things like food, medical care, and shelter that are absolutely necessary to reduce immediate, terrible suffering. But on the flip side, you desperately need sustainable growth, local businesses, stable institutions, outside investment, and open markets. So the big debate is this. Does prolonged dependence on emergency aid unintentionally weaken local economic independence? Many experts argue that long-term emergency assistance by itself just cannot replace the foundational elements required for real, lasting growth. Section 4. The Human Cost. Real lives behind the statistics. Because we really can't just talk about GDP drops, trade deficits, and giant reconstruction contracts all day. We have to zoom in on the actual human impact. We have to remember the farmer who literally cannot reach their fields because of a new security roadblock, the student unable to attend university, the local shop owner losing all their regular customers, and the young people packing up and emigrating because local opportunities have just completely vanished. Behind every single economic statistic we've discussed so far, there is a real life totally disrupted by uncertainty. Okay, let's walk through this vicious economic cycle, because it's a trap that can hold down an occupied population for generations. Lower investment directly kills jobs. Fewer jobs mean folks just aren't spending money in the local economy. That lack of spending weakens businesses even further, which scares away even more investment. And boom, the spiral repeats. It is an economic trap that can just completely stifle a society's entire potential.
Finally, Section 5, the ultimate price. Can everyone lose?
We often assume occupations have clear winners and clear losers, right? But the economic reality is way more nuanced. Prolonged instability imposes a massive generational burden on absolutely everyone. And yes, that includes the occupier. Maintaining control means skyrocketing military expenditures, constant international criticism, and totally drained political capital. Add to that reduced foreign investment due to the regional instability, plus massive ongoing long-term security costs. So, while occupied societies experience severely stunted economic development, occupying another economy is also incredibly expensive and deeply draining for the occupier too.
History consistently points to this really harsh truth. Sustainable prosperity rarely, if ever, grows from prolonged conflict. Strong economies don't just depend on shiny new infrastructure and open trade routes. They run on stability, predictable laws, education, and above all else, trust. While an occupation might successfully redraw the lines on a map, rebuilding the essential human trust required for an economy to actually function, that takes significantly longer than rebuilding leveled cities.
So, I want to leave you with one final provocative question to chew on as you consider the true hidden costs of geopolitical conflicts. Can lasting economic prosperity exist without lasting peace? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Definitely keep this question in the back of your mind the next time you're scrolling through the headlines, and try to look past the military maneuvers to see the very real economic realities operating beneath. Until next time.